Hi, namaste, and thank you for tuning in. I first and foremost want to apologize for the long lapse in time since my last video, and even more so for my long lapse of silence regarding the actual reason I left the cult of Nithyananda last August. I'd like to give a little bit of background information as to what prompted me to leave that organization, why I now call it a cult, why I'm so sorry for all the years I spent promoting that place, thinking it was good, why I've come to the conclusion now that it's actually not. So first and foremost, last year in August, I was sent to Toronto on what was kind of a secret mission within that organization. I was meant to try to get political asylum for the guru who calls himself Nithyananda in Canada. And at that time, simultaneously, two of the children from the Nithyananda Gurukul, the residential school based in his ashram outside of Bangalore, South India, were also in Toronto, trying to basically drum up public support through power manifestation. Basically, what these kids would do is sit on a throne, chant a mantra to connect themselves to that guru, and then proceed to express what most people think of as miraculous powers, reading through the third eye while blindfolded, scanning somebody's body for illnesses, looking into the distance and doing a remote viewing, or giving people answers to the most profound as well as the most personal questions in life by reading the Akashic records. One night while we were all there together, and I want to make it clear, I was a Gurukul Acharya at the time. I was one of the people who taught a class on a regular basis to the kids. That's why they had a personal relationship with me. I was one of the few people in the organization who had approval from the power structure, the authorities, meaning Nithyananda himself, Ranjita, who is known there as Ma Nithyananda Mai Swami, as well as Madvait and Rishi Advait, who ran the Gurukul. I was one of the few people who had approval to talk to all of the kids. And I taught them social media, so how to use Facebook, how to use YouTube, how to use Instagram. So the kids were already comfortable with me because of the amount of time I had spent with them in India. And one night, while I was there, the two children, a 13-year-old girl, a boy about that same age, they came downstairs to where I was staying and started to cry. Really, they had an emotional breakdown. And the little girl told me that the Akashic record readings she was doing was not real, that she wasn't seeing golden letters and reading people's cosmic answers to their questions. She was actually just making things up. And that the blindfold reading they were doing was also fake, and that they couldn't really body scan, they couldn't really do remote vision. And it was like what I thought was my purpose in life, what I had based so much of my own belief in, was shattering. Because for those of us who were members of that organization, as some of you might remember from my previous videos, the foundation of our belief was that these superpowers were called Shaktis, that they were spiritual powers awakened through the initiation by that guru, and that these kids were basically representatives of him. People made profound life choices based on the answers given to them by these children. And I mean choices like giving up their families to become monastic members of the order, giving all of their money as a donation to the organization, signing up for programs that cost tens of thousands of dollars because kids told them in Akashic reading that they had to. So when she told me that they were faking these powers, at first I found it hard to believe. I was experiencing something that cult psychologists refer to as cognitive dissonance. And that's when we're given a piece of information so contradictory to the worldview we've been brainwashed to believe that we can't even process it. We feel like it is impossible to believe. But because this was a girl who I trusted, a girl who I knew very well, whose parents I had spent a lot of time with, I listened and I asked her, why did you fake these powers? And she cried even harder, and she said that in their school, kids were subjected to starvation, sleep deprivation. They weren't even allowed to get up to go to the bathroom unless they expressed these powers. And she said that the worst thing that happened, and the reason why she was crying to me, she said she was afraid to go back to Bengaluru Adinam, outside of Bidadi, South India, because she didn't want to get beaten again. And this was when, I mean, my life was already unraveling by listening to this child, but when she said that they had been beaten, it was more than I could handle. So I asked her to explain what happened. And she said that on the morning of December 31st, 2017, the Gurukul head stormed into the children's dorm first thing in the morning before the girls were awake with a stick and made one of the children, one of the young girls, beat every other girl there until they either bled or cried tears. They couldn't just cry, they had to have actual tears so that she knew it wasn't a fake cry. And that some of the kids had black eyes, some of the kids had welts visible on their skin, bruises. They were battered. And I asked the girl who beat them, I asked the girl telling me this, the girl who beat you, how did she feel? And she said it was harder on her than on everybody else. She was crying while being forced to beat her friends. And after this beating, the kids weren't allowed to leave their dormitory for days afterwards. They were locked inside basically a steel cage within the ladies' dorm, hidden from everybody else. See, I want to make it clear. The rest of the ashramites, as we called them, Adinavasis, we did not know that this abuse had taken place because the kids were locked in their dorm and none of us saw them. At the time, there was a program going on called Mahasadashivoham. And so most of us were busy all day, every day in the program hall. And, you know, the kids used to be a part of that program. Every day they would sit with participants to try to help them awaken their third eyes and manifest powers. The reason they were beaten, the little girl told me that the teacher, while the kids were getting brutally attacked, forced to attack each other, the teacher told them they are being punished because participants are not manifesting these powers, and that it's the children's responsibility to make the people express those powers through entanglement. The boy who was there in Toronto, I asked him at that point, did you know that this had happened in the girls' dorm? Because in that campus, boys and girls were strictly forbidden from speaking to each other. So I was wondering, you know, if she was making this up, he would maybe not even know. But I wanted to know what he knew. And he said, Ma, not only is what she telling you the truth, but the same thing happened in the boys' dorm also. That one of the 17-year-old boys was forced to beat all the other boys. And he said that that boy who had to beat the younger kids just collapsed in tears afterwards, because here was a big 17-year-old forced to assault children half his age and younger. It's horrific to think about. And that was when I had the realization that no matter how good I felt from Swamiji Nithyananda's meditations, no matter how charismatically he speaks, no matter how much I love Hinduism, and I still love and honor and revere Sanatana Dharma, I still believe purely practiced Dharma is the ultimate path in life. But I realized in that moment, an organization that claims to be nonviolent, but that condones the beating of children, does not deserve to be venerated and respected. And that's when I realized I did not want to mislead any more people and recruit for that cult anymore. So at the end of August of last year, I dropped the kabi, meaning I stopped wearing the orange robes of a Hindu renunciant, and quietly came back to my regular life in Canada. And a lot of people were criticizing me at that point in time. A lot of Nithyananda's critics were criticizing me, saying, why did you just leave? You must have some insider information. There must be more to it than that. But I was still brainwashed enough, and I can't stress enough that this organization brainwashes people. I was still brainwashed enough that I believed that even though the kids had been beaten, maybe the fault or the responsibility is in the teachers. I desperately wanted to report the attack to the police, but I was prevented from doing so by a lady who was the Mahant of Europe, who also happened to be there in Toronto at the time. She told me, don't call the police, report this internally to Nithyananda. So I sent him a message via his main secretary, his right-hand person, Ranjita, who denied the incident happened, and nothing was done about it. Since then, I've done my own internal investigations. I've had so many people come to me who have witnessed this kind of abuse, whose children have told them about it, including a very brave woman named Vinuta Shankar from Bangalore, who has exposed all of this on her Facebook page, describing in detail the sad experiences her own son lived in that organization. He was a full-time student in the Gurukul. He lived there, and he begged his parents to take him home. And when they did, he told them all of this and much more. But because of the brainwashing, I wasn't able to process the horrors of this cult in such a way that put accountability on the leader. And this is something that Leah Remini described beautifully in her A&E series exposing Scientology, that a lot of Scientologists who suffer because of the way the administrators of that organization treat them, they still think L. Ron Hubbard was a spiritual genius and that he had given them something great. So I was going through that process of knowing that the kids had been abused, but still thinking Swamiji's teachings are great. And it took me a full year of deprogramming myself before I finally had the strength and the courage to speak up about all of this and understand without any question or any doubt that as a self-proclaimed micromanager of his organization, no decision is made in that cult without Nithyananda's direct personal approval or instruction. Nobody breathes without him telling them they have to. And I'm not even saying that's as a tongue-in-cheek thing. He would literally tell people, stop breathing, start breathing in some of our internal meetings. So a micromanager who decides who we're allowed to be friends with, who we're allowed to listen to, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, when we wake up, when we go to sleep, what we eat, what we don't eat. There's no way the teachers in the Gurukul school would brutalize the kids without him knowing about it. And that's when I realized he is a dangerous cult leader. I started privately reaching out to parents who had kids in that school and telling them what I knew and requesting that they please take this seriously, talk to their children, help get their kids out, and planning what more I should do. And in that process, found out much, much more of the abuse beyond just what was happening to the kids, that was happening to other people. And that's when I realized really I had to take this to the public. And I mean, people have lost their life savings to attend programs because they were promised that after making a payment, the money would just reappear in their bank accounts. And because of the brainwashing, I was one of the people who promoted that silly, stupid idea. And I want to really apologize to all of you who have watched my videos who have maybe made that mistake yourselves because I encouraged you to. And I want you to know now that